Sithen Hierophones gim glad offer grundas gast ir quom. Eto afen grom user neosan thar we gesunde sal wer dodan. Thar was Honsthio, hild on sage, fer belu fagum. He firmest lag girded kempa, him grendel werth marinum magu thenge, hegne. Tu muth bonan leofes manes, lik el forswell, no thy ar ut the gen idel hende. Bona blodig top bealawa gen indig of them god sele. Gongon wold ac he magnes rof min costode grappode gero fom. He mec thar on inen unsinge dior dad fruma geodon wold manigra sumne. Hits me mite swa sithen ik on ir uprit astod. He on weg losad little while lif wina break huethre himsio swirthre swathe weirdade hand on hjorte and he han thonan modes gelmor mere grund gelfol. Da was eft rathe gero garn wachke grandelis boldor sithode sor ful sunu death fornam wig hete wedra. Denia leod bronde for baranan ne on bal heladan. Leofne manan hio that ik at bar fondes faithmum under firgens dream. Ik tha thas wellness the is with kuth grimne girilne grund hirde fond. Thar unk wheel was hand gemane hom hiofre weo und ik hafte berkarf en tham guth sele grandeles muller hacnum eknum. That was Theod Sketha Thridan Sift Frekne Fir Draka Fatha Gemidnig Raste on Thon Rofan Tha Hum Rum Al Gealb hat on Hitho Glim Heels Ilne Gebefing Birretan Banum He Geblodegod Wirth Saul Diore Swat Yithum Whale. That he thon nith gahast neothor huene slo seke on sir rum. That fet spord gedaf fa un fated. That fear ongon swethrian sithan. That gen silk sinig geweod his gewite while siexe gebrath bitter on bedu sker. Thought he on birnen wag for rat wedra helm wirm on midam. Nu is wil geofa wedra leoda dreiten geeta. Death bede fast hundath while reste wirmes laethum. Swa begnornodon geeta leode lafordes hirere heorth gene atas. Quaidon thought he ware wirlold caninga mana mildost on mon thwarost leodum leothest on lef giornost.
The original form of the English language was known as the Proto-English. This was a Germanic English spoken in around the area known as the Roman Empire as Britannia. It was influenced by both various Germanic languages through the trade and skirmishes and Latin because Britannia was was a Roman territory at the time. The first major transition in the English language was the shift from Proto-English to Old English. The shift occurred when the Romans left Britannia and the area was invaded by such Germanic tribes as the Anglos, the Saxons, and the Jutes. The Germanic languages of these tribes were notably simpler than Latin, which often was cumbersome and complex. For this reason, many everyday words such as house, woman, and loaf were taken from these Germanic languages. In addition, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday were all derived from the Anglo-Saxon languages, as they are named after Anglo-Saxon gods. The next major shift in the English language was the Norman conquest in 1066 by William the Conqueror. The Norman conquest left England under the control of the Normans, and with this control came a linguistic transition. When the Normans conquered England, they became the ruling class of the area. The indigenous people in England in turn became the peasant class and often served the Normans, but unfortunately, their languages were entirely different, so neither the Normans nor the English could understand one another. This era of complete bafflement between servant and employer led to the development of a pidgin language that eventually morphed into a form of the English language entitled Middle English. The Normans provided English over 10,000 French words that are still present in some form of English today. These words tended to be those of power or station, as French was the language of power in England at the time. The principle is exemplified in words such as beef, mutton, and pork as opposed to their counterparts, cow, sheep, and swine. The word that described animals as food were absorbed into English from French, and the words that describe their farm animals were derived directly from English. The next major area of transition from English came when the English defeated the Normans after a 100-year war that actually lasted 116 years. After the Normans left England, the English were left to govern themselves for the first time in 100 years. The budding government of this new nation began to use a more standardized form of English that was greatly affected and spread by the Great Vowel Shift is also associated with this era. This change primarily affected spoken English and marked the shift between the usage of vowels from early forms of English to the modern vowel sounds we use today. This shift is also attributed as one of the causes of the complex spelling system English uses today.
English continued to evolve after early modern English developed and eventually became modern English, although this shift was not quite as substantial as the others. There were a legion of components that caused this variance, but although many new vocabulary words and phrases were added, the grammatical structure of the language stayed fairly similar. One hugely influential factor was the various writings of William Shakespeare. Shakespeare arguably added around 2,000 new words and phrases to the English language. His additions were particularly influential and widespread, as the average potentially illiterate man could be exposed to them through the theater. Words such as eyeball, puppy dog, dauntless, lackluster, anchovy, and phrases such as the green-eyed monster, dead as a doornail, and good riddance all came from Shakespeare. Another such factor was the translation of the Bible into English in 1611, otherwise known as the King James Bible. This Bible added a myriad of previously unheard words and phrases into English that are still used in English vernacular today. For example, the powers that be, go the extra mile, and a labor of love were all taken from the King James Bible. The publication of the first reliable English dictionary by Dr. Samuel Johnson in 1755 was another such component. It was 18 inches tall, with 42,773 entries. It defined and made relatively publicly accessible words such as pickle herring, jobble knoll, and fopdoodle. It provided a system of standardization for English which was quite profitable. However, the language continued to evolve in spite of it, much to the lexicographer's annoyance, and the Oxford English Dictionary, first published in 1928, which is still used today, is constantly being revised and republished. The transition of the language of science from Latin to English and the huge scientific revolution of the era was yet another factor in this shift. A plethora of new scientific words were added to English because of this, words that described things that had previously gone unnamed. For example, acid, gravity, electricity, pendulum, cardiac, torus all came about during this time. Finally, England's incredible empire and conquering ability added copious new words to English from countries such as America, the Caribbean, India, and South Africa, Australia, and its other various colonies. English is still evolving today. The distance between America and England continues to make very slight variances in dialogues of English, but the facility to communicate from long distances provided by the internet and modern technology has kept them from drifting too far apart. The internet and other new forms of nonverbal communication have created an abundance of related vocabulary, particularly jargon and abbreviations. As new concepts, technologies, and discoveries come about, new words are created to describe them. For instance, concepts like capitalism have required the creation of many new words such as merger, bottom line, break even, white collar, and blue chip. Also, English is a global language and the language of power, so it is spoken almost everywhere. As previously mentioned, technologies such as the internet kept it from evolving dramatically across the world. However, numerous pidgin-esque languages have formed around the world, such as Hinglish, Hindu English, Chinglish, Chinese English, and Shinglish, Singaporean English. The translation of Beowulf by Seamus Heaney distinguishes itself from other translations in several ways, but its main distinguishing factor is that Heaney emphasized the cultural aspects of the story as opposed to its literal translation. Various literary techniques were highly valued in Old English, and therefore these techniques were often used in Old English literature. For example, alliteration was revered as it was thought to give a very musical effect to the story. Also, the Anglo-Saxons highly valued riddles and mind games, so they often wrote in a very roundabout fashion to incorporate them. Heaney focused on assimilating these Anglo-Saxon cultural aspects into his translation to better encapsulate the true meaning of the story.